Hey guys, welcome back. Today I want to talk about something that is really one of the most compassionate, and I always used to say to caregivers, especially of loved ones who were dying or very seriously ill, this was an extremely compassionate and very loving thing that they could do for their loved ones. Recovering from a little cold, I'm much better, but you gotta just excuse my little state right now. And let's continue these conversations and education about death and dying so we die better at end of life and live a good one till we get there. So let's get into it today. So one of the recent weeks on social media, I've been doing a little kind of series, and this one week was where I was covering this, but I'll be covering it a little bit more in detail today, was about the concept of a natural death. And I've done a video on this before on YouTube, and I've also done a podcast on it. And when we talk about natural death, I like to explore kind of what that means and what it means for people. And what I've really found interesting was working, especially in hospice and palliative care, and even before that, when I worked in the ICU as a nurse at the bedside, was that people never thought about it before. Now, this is where we have to be much better, I think, as medical professionals and people caring for people who are seriously ill and dying. That, some things come really naturally if you've been working in a field for a very long time. Sorry, my ear is still a little hurting. And so some things, and we're around it so much, and then we kind of are surprised when people don't really think the way we do, which is kind of crazy. This is our day-to-day, but not the day, excuse me, not the day-to-day of the people who are coming here and being treated. They're the patients and or their caregivers. So sometimes I was surprised, like, oh, have you thought about what natural death means? And I used to be kind of surprised, but it not, of course, as I matured through my career, I thankfully smartened up, and I will continue to look forward to getting wiser and smarter and keep growing and expanding that horizon. Fingers crossed. That's my plan for sure. That's my goal. So anyway, with that said, I want to just kind of play that out with you. Have you a thought of what a natural death may look like? Now, this is again in the concept of end of life. Back in the day, before we had and this is an interesting wall here that I'm in a hotel this week in the middle of Croatia, in the middle of nowhere. And so it's been a really interesting week. Went to the smallest town ever in the world, which is like about an hour away from here. Croatia is a country I just love anyway. So that's the wall. It's a bright color, but it's like stones and everything everywhere else. Anyway, for those of you who are on podcasts, I showed in the video. Nothing much to see, don't worry. So when I worked with people, just back in the day, before we had these medical advancements, people would get sick, and, they would have usually the doctor come to their home and do whatever they could to just kind of usually manage symptoms. It was, they were doing things maybe in the hopes of fixing things, but, then at the end of the day, they were trying to just mostly kind of palliate them, which is the word we use to really kind of settle, treat, and manage symptoms. And I'm sure that they were hoping, of course, for that person to get better, but things usually took a natural course, if unless there was something else that they were able to do that was more curative focused and maybe a little more invasive, that might have worked. But as our advancements have taken place, which are really valid, and there's definitely a place for them, they've done so much. But where I've seen people get stuck is they are with their loved one, or maybe they're the patients themselves, and they just get used to doing one thing. They get used to when something new pops up, they go to the doctor, they get more tests done, they start more treatments. And then when things get worse, they go to the doctor, they get more tests done, they seek more treatments. So, and then that's just a repeated cycle. And then they do the things that they knew might have worked a little bit before and expecting the same result. But they start to go into a stage in their body where their body becomes a declining slash dying body. Because with the progression of the illness or the condition, illnesses, conditions, the body will naturally start to have organ failure. It will naturally start to break down and stop and cease function in many ways. And as one system breaks down and ceases to function, other systems will do the same. And you stop responding to the stuff that used to work before. And then I've seen many people just think, well, then we'll just go back again, and we'll go back and we'll do more. Even if it kills me, we're just going to keep going back and keep trying to do more. And then they also get their hopes up when the doctor might say, well, there's an experimental trial going on, so you can try these drugs. But what I want to say is, and I'll do a separate post on this too, is that drug trials or experimental trials are really for people in the future. They're really using the person who's taking these drugs, these treatments, as an experiment to see how it's going to work for somebody in the future. And, then they throw out these percentages. There's a 10% chance of this, so 1% chance of this, 5% chance of this, 30% chance of that. And you have to really look at that in the grand scheme of things. What does that really mean? And this is why in the book and also in our videos and things like that, I really talk about, then you have to really get specific. You have to really get specific with your providers in what does this mean specifically day to day for me? Sorry, I just look half dead. You have to really ask, what does it mean specifically for me? What do you expect? So in a month's time, what should I expect my status to be? What is my improvement expectation? What is it specifically going to look like on a day-to-day for my activity levels, my goals of care, my dignity in life? And for those of you who've read the book, have done some of the exercises in this. And of course, I'll break this up too, because we have to go into so many deeper, little subcategories here. But this is again in the context of end of life. So in the context of end of life, when we start to see that these things aren't working and you're not going back to baseline is that kind of status that you hold, that is kind of your status quo. I hate to say normal because I don't, who knows what's normal nowadays, right? But it's kind of your status quo. And what you're maybe okay with also when it comes to like quality of life. But your baseline in terms of your medical status, like, you were walking before you got sick. Does it mean that after your hip fracture, you're going to be walking afterwards? And with your, say, metastatic cancer, is that going to be the case? Are you going to be able to tolerate physical therapy and be well nourished enough, have enough nutrients going on in your body and oxygen and all that kind of stuff to nourish your body to repair itself enough to benefit from physical therapy, for example? In a body that's declining and / dying, that is likely to be unattainable, because in order for you to benefit from physical therapy, you have to not be malnourished. You have to have a certain level of protein, certain, body percentage of muscle and fat and all that kind of stuff, and be able to utilize anything, the medicine that's being put in your body, the food and nutrition that's being put in your body, and then to be able to have the energy and be able to utilize the benefits from physical therapy, recover, and all that kind of stuff. So, and everyone, of course, all the cases, everybody's case is so different, individual, right? With this said, when we're talking about a declining and dying body, this is why I say it's one of the most loving things you can do is to allow for natural death, because you just stop fighting the inevitable. We know the inevitable is going to happen. And then I just see two choices in how you're going to live. And everyone's like, oh, well, they get really upset, when we talk about a natural death, and they don't want to talk about it because I can imagine why. Yes. When we are talking about death, the feelings associated are so deep, and there's so much grief, loss, anger, pain, all that kind of stuff. But let's not confuse that with making the best decision. So yes, when we talk about a natural death, it's those It's how you're living for the last time here that you have on earth, or your loved one here has on earth. And it's deciding, making two decisions. Do you want your life to be going against the grain and fighting and doing treatments, going to the hospital, coming home exhausted, having multiple side effects? Or do you want to allow things to happen naturally and have them well controlled, i.e. with hospice care, ideally, with the right medications, with the right medical care team around you that is specialized in this time of life, so that you are really shepherd in this time of life, living in a very comfortable way with dignity, whatever else is important for you at end of life. So again, this is the context of end of life. So I want to simplify it a little bit and look at those kind of two choices of how you want your last moments, last days to live, or your loved one to live at end of life. So just give that some thought. And like I said to many of my caregivers before, you are doing something so deeply loving for your loved one when you're allowing things. Sorry, it's a little noisy here. I think Stuttgart was noisy, but I guess it's a little. They have breakfast goes till like noon here. Sorry. Anyway, something's happening outside my room. So anyway, the allowing for the natural progression to occur is really the most loving thing, because it's the gentlest thing. You're not giving up. You've heard me say before, and I quoted my previous medical director, where hospice is not like you're not doing nothing. Hospice is not stopping aggressive care. Hospice is aggressive care, but aggressive care towards a goals of care that is surrounded and around dignity, comfort, and all those things that has to do with end of life. So that's not what he said, but, he was very clear to say that, because medical professionals often said, we're stopping all aggressive care and going to hospice, he was very clear to address that hospice is aggressive care, because it's aggressive care, but the goals of care are different because the situation's different. The inevitable is here, but we can manage it much better. So we treat end-of-life symptoms, end-of-life dignity, all that stuff holistically, very aggressively. Anyway, people here in Croatia are really happy and wonderful, I gotta tell you. Anyway, let me know if you have questions. More is always on the table. So if you have questions, message me. I love your messages. Love communicating with you. And if there's anything specific you want me to cover too, I will. We can do deep dives and all that kind of stuff. Okay, I love you. I will talk to you soon. Let's continue to normalize these conversations in education about dying, so we die better at end of life and live a good one till we get there. And I will see you soon. Next time I will be much healthier, so not so nasal and not so snotty. Love you. Talk to you soon.